I'm very excited to spend the back half of our time together to discuss how to make travel accessible to all. And so for everyone watching, please know that if you have any questions at all during our discussion today, you can place those in the chat. We have 4 amazing guests with us who I'd like to now welcome to the virtual stage as they turn on their audio and video. And instead of me talking about you, I'm actually going to have everyone introduce themselves briefly. And then since I have holiday season on the brain because of our intro video, I'd also like you to share your favorite Thanksgiving dish after you briefly introduce yourself. So John Sage, I'm going to start with you. If you could introduce yourself to our wonderful audience.
Sure. I'm John Sage. I'm CEO of Accessible Travel Solutions. I'm a manual wheelchair user, and I think my favorite is green bean casserole because I don't get it that many other times a year.
Okay. Forgot to add that we will be judging you based on your responses. So Allison, let's now kick it over to you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Allison Brooks. I am the Director of Destination Experience and Advocacy for Visit Mesa. If you don't know, Mesa is just outside of Phoenix, Arizona. And so I would have to, my favorite thing is the wine. Like, honestly, I'm already planning that. And I figure if you have great wine, nothing else matters.
Okay. I would agree, Allison. John Morris, how about yourself?
Hello, everyone. I'm John Morris. I'm the founder of wheelchairtravel.org and the Accessible Development Group Consultancy. I'm cliche. My favorite food is pumpkin pie.
It's not cliche when it's classic. All right. And last but certainly not least, Kevin. You are on mute, Kevin.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Kevin Wright, Vice President of Global Marketing at Travel Oregon. Live in snowy Bend, Oregon. My favorite, I'm gonna go a little bit different and say that my favorite thing is the mixing of all the foods on the plate. But I will also share in Allison's love for a nice Oregon Pinot Noir to go with it as well.
All right. Well, now it's 8:30 in the morning for me, but I'm already hungry. So thank you all. But to actually start into our discussion today, John Sage, I want to start our conversation by asking a question that's always on my mind, which is how do we appropriately refer to travelers with disabilities, whether that's in marketing materials, social posts, or even everyday life?
Yeah, this is often one of the first questions that's asked, and it's interesting that it comes up so much. I think it's because people get uncomfortable, and so it sort of really hits home. I mean, the short answer is you put the person first, and then the disability. So it's people, people with disabilities. I prefer the term wheelchair user. That I use a wheelchair, and that gets me around. It does vary by country. So here, the signs next to the accessible parking say handicapped parking. Handicapped is offensive in the UK. In the UAE, they use the phrase persons with determination. And so it does vary. But overall, what I also want to say is, as a person with a disability, I don't really care what you say. Just make sure that the place is accessible. You can use whatever phrase you want. I just want to know that I can enter the bathroom and I can reach the clothes, the clothes hangers. I mean, some of the simple things are far more important to me.
All right. Thank you so much, John Sage. Kicking it over to our other John, John Morris, what would you say are some of the most important characteristics to understand about travelers with disabilities?
Well, I think first and foremost, I'd look at their motivation. And the reality is that the motivation to travel for me as someone who has a disability is the exact same as it was before I had a disability. I'm coming to you today from Rome, and I want to do all the things. I was here before my disability, and it's my first time back now with a wheelchair, and I want to go to all the same places that I went to before. I went to the Colosseum today. That was actually surprisingly accessible. But the reasons that people are traveling with disabilities are the same as anyone else: to see that iconic tourist attraction in the city, to dine at the finest restaurant, to visit family, to go to the beach. all those things are things that disabled people are interested in as well. And so obviously, disability varies substantially between people, and everyone has different needs. But it's important for businesses and destinations to reach out to their travelers, to their customers, to understand how they can best meet the needs of the individual traveler.
Thank you. John Sage, is there anything else you maybe want to add to any important characteristics to understand about travelers with disabilities?
Sure, and particularly knowing that this audience, it's what do destinations need to know about this demographic? So I live in New Braunfels, Texas, and we have 2 rivers, 3 lakes. It's home of the oldest dance hall in Texas. It's big music scene. It's got this great water park. It's right now we have the largest Oktoberfest in the United States going on. So it's a big tourist destination. And when I speak with business owners here, what they tell me is we don't need more people on a summer weekend. We need people during the week and in the off season. That's what we need. And so you look, where are you going to find those? Well, it's not going to be families with kids in school. It's going to be seniors, and seniors overlaps in a big way with the disabled population. You have to understand, disabled people, it's not me and John in wheelchairs. It's seniors with bad knees and bad eyes and bad ears. And so, you're doing a huge service to your local businesses if you address this market.
Thank you so much. In the vein of that, I want to touch on what some destinations are currently doing in the accessible travel space. So Allison, can you please tell us about the work that you and your team are doing at Visit Mesa?
Yeah, so we have a very big mission, and that's to become one of the most accessible cities in all of the United States. So with that, we've already implemented, we're the first city to become autism certified, also first city to be working with the Hidden Disability Sunflower Program. We have a partnership with Aira, which is an app for people who are blind or low vision can use to get in touch with a visual interpreter. Threshold 360, we've done the videos, basically know before you go, so you can virtually visit almost any place you want to go so that you know what to expect, and they're all done through the accessibility lens. So we're expanding on all of those initiatives, but more so right now we're focusing on just marketing to our visitors that they're available and there, and come and make that experience a little bit better for yourselves, we hope. And then also to all of our stakeholders that these are here and need to be educated about them, because it's really important. Like, we can have a Hidden Disability Sunflower Program, but if you don't know what it is and can't recognize what that lanyard means around that person's neck, it falls flat. So that's a huge thing. And then also just working on measurement. We want to make sure we know that this is not only the right thing to do, but a great business decision. So again, proving to our stakeholders of the why behind it, because again, a lot of people, there's 1 in 4 people have a disability. And so this is a very niche market, but it's not a niche market. This is a huge market, and a loyal one at that. So we want to make sure that all of these efforts are being reflected as a good ROI.
Thank you, Allison. And for my own curiosity, can you explain what the hidden disability, I don't want to use the wrong term, but I'm very interested in that program. Can you explain it a little bit for our audience?
Like a Girl Scout, I come prepared. So here's this is a Hidden Disability lanyard. It's bright green with yellow sunflowers all over it. And anyone can pick up one of these lanyards at a few locations all around Mesa. If you're wearing it, it's basically showing I have a hidden disability, something that you cannot see. So it could be autism, could be severe PTSD, anxiety. A lot of people have that coming out of COVID. And it just means I have this hidden disability. Please be a little extra patient, a little extra kind, whatever, as I'm in your business, or I am going about my business in your city. So that's basically it. And it started in the UK at airports there, and it's come out to the States here at a lot of airports, and we were the first one to adopt it as a city.
Well, I learned something new today, and that's such a wonderful program. So thank you for sharing with our audience. Kevin, how about you and your team at Travel Oregon? What work are you all currently doing in this accessible travel space?
We have a lot of, I think, tactical programs that are in play or in development right now. I think what's really exciting for me is the interest that I've seen from not only our team, but our industry. we brought a bunch of DMO partners with us to the Travelability Conference over the summer. And just to see the excitement and the programs that were born out of the inspiration just from bringing those folks to the conference. For example, in Newport, Oregon, they have built a series of accessible itineraries within their community. And as the state, we are helping support them as a potential model that we can use for DMOs across the state. Our website is something that we've been working on for a long time, not just to make sure that it's ADA accessible, but it has the content. And we've been working in that space for quite a while, and to the point where through the Travelability group, we've built a playbook, and Allison's contributed to that. So we've taken our learnings from our website development, as well as a lot of other DMOs and a lot of folks who are way ahead of us, and try to pull some of that information together to help others who are taking this work on. There's a meeting, I think, going on right now. We're looking to add hearing loops into our 8 state welcome centers. So we're getting that off the ground. And we've really been intentional with our grant program to really give bonus points for those that are building things within their community, like ramps for kayaks, accessible trails. And so we've highlighted that within our grant program. I had somebody from our grants team sent me a note that says over the last 3 years, we've funded over $300,000 in grant funding for accessibility efforts. So there's just a lot of things like that we're working on, and it's really organic. And it's really just neat to see, somebody knows somebody who's got a passion for a particular disability or an interest or something they need in their community. And it's kind of happening organically that way for us.
Thank you so much, Kevin. That's all wonderful to hear. And congrats to you and all of Travel Oregon for putting all of these programs together and listening to the community around you. I want to focus on some of the main barriers that are perhaps preventing the travel industry from making more progress in the accessible travel space. I want to start with you, John Sage, but what are some of these barriers preventing more progress in this space?
Yeah, so I've had a lot of conversations. I'm on the World Travel and Tourism Council, and so I get to speak with the executives of some of the largest travel companies in the world. And it's really surprising that there's a misunderstanding at the highest levels about the disabled traveler and the accessible travel market. And what is accessible travel? Is it about compliance? Is it customer service? Is it a demographic? Is it a travel style? And so it's what we found is that at the highest level, the decision maker level, it's challenging for them to evaluate the opportunity and move on it. What is it? How do we decide what amount of resources we want to spend on this, or if we want to be in the market? So I think the expertise is a big barrier that's out there, and then it goes into expertise is one, but also resources. If you look at an organization and you ask them who's your top accessibility expert and who's working on accessibility, a lot of times it's almost nobody. And so there's a resources issue. And so, are you going to hire into that position? And are you going to train somebody in accessibility and expect them to deliver a program, or are you going to outsource it? That's a challenge. And then tools is, okay, what tools exist? Are we going to have to develop our own tools? Do I need to have somebody read the ADA and read the EU guidelines and the UK guidelines and the ISO guidelines? We're talking hundreds and hundreds of pages. And so it's challenging to have that. And so those are just a few things that we've seen.
All right, thank you. John Morris, are there any other barriers preventing the travel industry from making more progress that you can think of?
Well, I certainly think that it's an awareness issue. And this tags on a little bit to what John Sage was talking about. I think that when I became disabled, I had an ignorance of the size of the disability community in the world. And, the CDC here in the United States says that 25% of people have a disability. We know that 1% of the US population uses a wheelchair full time. So that is a lot of people. And we're not doing a good enough job, I think, in communicating the real opportunity that exists within the marketplace to leaders. And, one of the pushbacks that I hear very often is, well, if 1% of America is a wheelchair user or 25% of Americans have a disability, why am I not seeing that out in the public space? And it's sort of a chicken or the egg situation, a cart before the horse. If we don't create the accessible environment for disabled people to exist and travel confidently, we're not going to see them represented in the population of travelers visiting our destinations. And so I think that this is an incredible opportunity for the destinations on this call and those that aren't represented to really make a foray into that market, put your best foot forward. And I think that once we establish a roadmap for travelers who have disabilities to confidently brave your destination and explore it, you'll really see a return on what, for a lot of destinations could be a very limited investment.
Thank you, John. Your point actually coincides with the great question that we got from an audience member, which is, does messaging specifically around accessibility come across as too blunt or trying too hard or pandering or performative to capture an audience, or does it actually invoke joy and inspiration for this audience?
It doesn't come off in a negative sense at all. One of the things that I look for when I'm checking out a business's website is, well, I need to know if it's accessible. If I'm going on a hotel's website, I want to find out what the accessible room looks like. I'd love for there to be a button on the homepage that takes me to the information that I'm looking for. Much as any other visitor to your website wants to have ease of access to the information that they're seeking out. And so when we make this clear accessibility information difficult to find or fail to provide it at all out of fear or concern that it might come off the wrong way, you're preventing that traveler from making that decision in confidence to spend their money with you or to visit your destination.
Thank you so much. Allison, I want to start with you with this next question, but what resources can organizations like Visit Mesa utilize to support them in their efforts to become an accessible destination or business? What resources are out there?
Yeah, so I would say two things. One, Kevin already kind of touched on quite a bit, actually, and that's Travelability. They're a wonderful resource and just growing, and all of the things that they are doing. I would definitely put it on your radar to attend their summit next summer if you can. But just hop on their website, look at all of the tech that's out there, all the different programs that are out there. Definitely worth plugging into Travelability. And then the other thing I would say is listen to these travelers themselves. And whether that be you go on webinars like this, or you find them on social media and you follow them and you get onto the Facebook groups, which there are, I'm on them, and listen to them, because that's where you're going to find what the pulse is, what's needed. And often, for example, I see the number one thing is always transportation, right? Like, how do we get from the airport to the hotel? Does anybody know blah, 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 blah? That's where you find it. You have to listen.
Okay. Thank you so much. Kevin, on your side up in Oregon, are there any other organizations or resources that you all can utilize to support these efforts of becoming a more accessible destination?
Yeah, I think I'll just double down on what Allison was saying. Speaking to folks in your community, whether it's an individual influencer. We just had one, a wheelchair user come through in getting that feedback from that influencer within those communities, working with groups like the Oregon Adaptive Sports group. There's several. We're very big in outdoor recreation, so there's several outdoor recreation groups that serve folks with disabilities, and so we have partnerships with them. So it might just be, it goes all the way from us sharing the services that they offer, but they'll even evaluate our website and look for gaps in content. And so, and another one is, maybe an untapped resource is city managers. Often for cities have an ADA coordinator that can provide accessibility info on public transportation, outdoor nature hiking trails, under land management. So I think just like we said, finding folks in the community who are experts and investing resources in them so they can help you determine where those gaps are.
Thank you, Kevin. John Sage, how can a company or a destination evaluate the current state of their accessibility? I know Allison and Kevin have mentioned a few ways, but are there any other ways in which a destination can really look into themselves and evaluate the current state of their accessibility?
Yeah, it's a challenge, and I've had these conversations with executives, and I ask them about accessibility, and they think, oh, we handle accessibility when a disabled person says they have a need, and we try to accommodate, which is really a reactive approach, and is not terribly effective, and it's risky, and it's time consuming, and it's money intensive, and everything like that. So that's not a really good approach. What we have done is actually put together an assessment to figure out help destinations evaluate how accessible they are. So it's 250 data points that we look at, 50 different. It's 5 characteristics of 50 different data points, so 250 total. And so that's the way that we feel is a really good place. You have to know where you are before you kind of know where you want to be and how to get there. And so that's a free assessment that we're now doing. This is, we've been planning trips for people with disabilities for 12 years. And so we're pretty excited to get into the DMO and travel business space.
Thank you so much. And John Morris, you touched on this a little bit earlier, but what are the necessary characteristics of accessible travel information that need to be provided to customers? What would you like to see on that destination website, or the information you seek when deciding to travel?
Well, I think Allison pointed out what is the most important thing, and certainly the thing that I look for first is transportation on the ground. I need to make sure that I'm not going to be stuck overnight at the airport. And we laugh about that, but I have slept in the airport a few times because I couldn't find accessible transport. And but generally, every aspect of the trip that that people think about as non-disabled travelers, disabled people are going to look at through the lens of, is it accessible? That goes from everything from accommodations to the attractions they're going to visit, the restaurants they'll eat at. There are a lot of opportunities for destinations on their websites to highlight businesses and attractions in their area that are really excelling when it comes to accessibility. And one of the great ways to do that is turning to the local disability community, the people who interact with these aspects of the community, these institutions within the local area regularly to gain their feedback and insight. If you had a friend who had a disability who's coming to visit you, where would you take them? And I think that's a great place to start.
Thank you so much. Wendy Keel had a question in the chat that Allison has addressed already, but in case people may not be monitoring the chat or want to hear what Kevin has to say, Wendy's question is if the programs that Visit Mesa and Travel Oregon have developed include training of frontline employees. Wendy says that she has always been impressed with the employees in many theme parks and tour guides relative to their understanding of the needs of guests with disabilities. So Allison, you chimed in, but I'll let you share that. And then Kevin, I'm interested for your training on the ground as well.
Yeah, this was a big one for me because in all of my career working for big companies, and I won't say the names of them, but big ones, right, that you would expect to get this kind of training. I never once got any kind of training on how do you speak to somebody who has a disability, for example. And I find that to be painful, for one, and something I want to change. And that is something. And the thing is that these programs, like, maybe you want to be autism certified or you want to get a partnership with Aira, they can cost a lot of money, but training, on the other hand, is not that expensive and goes very far. So I just mentioned in the chat is that we just started a extranet that's full of resources, videos, PDF trainings, you name it, that we have, and we just curated and we keep adding to. And I think that that's a really great thing, because then at any time, if, let's say, the mom and pop restaurant down the street wants to, have a little resource about how do we speak with somebody who has a disability, they can pull that up and share it with their people. So that's a huge one for us. And I can't stress that enough, that if you don't have the budget, like, that's the place to go, because it stretches the farthest for the experience.
All right. And Kevin, same to you. Do you guys have boots on the ground training?
We don't, and I think it's something that we need to look at. I think we're still in the phase of training our industry. I was just in meetings yesterday. We're starting to map out our governor's conference and looking at an accessibility track there. We've been doing a lot of training for our DMO partners on creating accessible websites for local DMOs, but that's more industry based. And I think we've got work to do as far as training for frontline staff.
Okay. Right. Well, we have a couple more minutes, so I wanted to open up for a couple more questions from our audience. And either John or anyone, actually, I'll let whoever wants to answer this take this. But if your destination is challenging for travelers with disabilities, whether it's an island destination with aging infrastructure or hotels that have limited access to types of transportation, how would you recommend those limitations be communicated to potential travelers?
Sure. I'll take this one. So I would say first is just transparency. So be transparent so that each individual can decide for themselves if they want to tackle those challenges. And this goes back to a question that was asked earlier about accessibility information. So we believe there's 5 components of successful and effective accessibility information. So it needs to be detailed, it needs to be accurate, it needs to be clear with photos. The detailed part includes measurements. It needs to be comprehensive, like John said, that it's transportation, but it's accommodation, it's sightseeing and attractions, and it needs to be trusted. And so, if you can check all those boxes, then you're going to avoid customer complaints and you're going to attract visitors. And so those are 5 of the things that we help our partners check those boxes.
Thank you. Those are great, John. John Morris, anything perhaps maybe to add about trying to be a little bit upfront with some of the difficulties a traveler with disabilities may face in a certain destination or accommodation type?
Well, I think sort of in, concurrence with sharing, a transparent picture of the challenges that are very real, perhaps you can point to some examples of how visitors to the destination have overcome those challenges in the process. That's something that I certainly am focused on with my website that's consumer focused. I've never been to a destination that is perfectly accessible. And so there are always going to be challenges that I and those who follow me will encounter. But showing travelers that there potentially are some opportunities to get around the challenges that may present themselves and still make for an enjoyable trip. And I think that that's what every destination wants to do, is show travelers what opportunity exists for them. And if it falls in line with their interests, then it can be a successful exchange.
Wonderful. Thank you. So that is actually all the time we have today, but Allison, Kevin, and both Johns, I'd like to extend my sincere gratitude to you all for helping lead this incredibly important discussion. I hope this leaves some of our audience both inspired and also excited to start implementing some of the wonderful advice that you all shared today. To all of you online, we will see you back here on December 6th for another update on the state of American travel. And lastly, as Erin highlighted earlier, today is Election Day, so please remember to go vote. Take good care, and thank you all very much.